pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Ms. McGuire.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Gayaski.
Here.
Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Mr. Nordine here. Mr. Byer.
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. Are there any agenda additions?
I would like to add an item to other, talk about the subcommittee for the sale of our real estate.
All right, this is concurrence on that? All right, number 6. Real estate sales. Any other agenda additions? All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the one addition.
So move.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Palmer, supported by Mr. Byer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's passed. Next, we go on to public comments. There's a 4-minute time limit. And for the first one, you have to fill out a card and present it to the superintendent. Do we have any cards?
We do. First would be Rob Miles, who would like to talk about medical marijuana.
Yes.
Yes, if you could just introduce yourself.
My name is Robert Miles. I'm owner of Landmark Title, and I also own an office downtown. And I also own an additional commercial building in Oscoda. And I'm here to talk about the medical marijuana proposal. It came to light that it was being proposed, and not only that, but that it was being proposed to open up a dispensary downtown, and whether that was going to be a benefit to our downtown area or not. I did meet with the Planning Commission at one of their meetings not too long ago, and they recommended that I also come here and voice my concerns. Personally, as a downtown business owner and a longtime resident of Oscoda, I see absolutely not one redeeming feature about having a medical marijuana dispensary in downtown businesses. It's my understanding that it's based upon permit access only. As a result, only those people who are going in to fulfill their prescription would have access to the building. You know, we're a tourist in a resort community, and I think it's bad enough to have empty buildings on our main street, let alone having some that say, I'm sorry, you're not allowed in. And I just don't see any benefit to having that type of a facility in our downtown area, even assuming that it was run absolutely beautifully and we had absolutely no problems with the operation. I think that any buildings downtown should be open for the general public as a whole. And with that in mind, I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that there are some concerns about those types of facilities downtown. Not only that, I hope that you give a lot of thought to whether any of those facilities should be anywhere in our township and or any part of that kind of a business. When the state starts waving money around, I know that it's easy to jump on board. And, you know, I haven't heard any financial woes that Oscoda Township is suffering from. I know that we've got a lot of different issues at hand. But with this type of a business, until it's been in operation for a while, I just see no reason to jump on board. Let's see how this thing's going to operate. Let's see how these establishments are going to be run. Let's see who's going to be hired as employees. Let's see how it works for other communities. For instance, I know that I've got to go out of town to get my heart work done. The fact that people have to go out of town to get their prescription filled, I don't think is the end of the world. Obviously, everybody's been taking care of that in the meantime, and this is simply a new way to regulate and try and control that type of business. I know they've been doing it in some other states already, and now Michigan has decided to jump on board with that. And I just caution the board, just be careful. Be careful, you've got a lot of responsibility. I can tell you, growing up in Oscoda, this is the last thing I would have ever seen even being proposed for Oscoda Township as a business, let alone having an establishment right downtown to dispense it. I know I wouldn't want to walk my grandchildren in front of it, regardless of the medicinal purposes. I just think that there are some businesses that shouldn't be in certain areas of our community. And, you know, we can all imagine the types of businesses that we wouldn't want. And I just want you to know this is one that I wouldn't prefer in our downtown area. I think Oscoda should continue to focus on a resort area, a tourist area, and bring in businesses that are going to foster that kind of growth. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other cards?
We do. Steve Droop would like to talk about Oscoda Township.
Good evening. Steve Droop, 2006 Fern Road, Oscoda, Michigan. I just wanted to talk about a couple things that I've brought up in the past here that this week in the paper really shed some light on. First of all, I guess I want to talk about the Arneson Farmers Market. And as far as I'm concerned, what a waste of money it is to refurbish that old building that should be tore down. I don't have a problem with having that building, but let's tear it down and put up a new efficient one-story building. One of the ways they try and sell it is we're gonna rent it out for weddings and what have you, showers. I asked the township for how many times last year the Warrior Pavilion was rented out, and received that information, and it was rented out 16 times out of a possible 156 times. Friends of mine own halls downstate. Their prime time is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That gives you 156 times they count on that their halls are going to be rented. We rented it 16 times. So I don't think that's a positive saying we're going to spend money to make money. I just don't see it happening. And nothing in 2017 at all. The bike path, I understand we've ran into some snags on the bike path. We're not happy with it not going through downtown Oscoda. I don't know what's going on with that. I was kind of against the bike path and the waste of money on that from the get-go too, as you well know. Let's go to the township code enforcement. As far as the Radowski lawsuit that just took place, I guess in the last, I don't know, it's been going on for a while, yet more harassment from the township on the code enforcement and the zoning board, and what we put these people through in this town when they try and do something, build something, or something the township doesn't like. What we put these three people through is just ridiculous. The waste of money in court, I just don't see anything positive out of coming out of this. Once again, more negative towards Oscoda. The other thing I see positive for the, I'll go back to the Arneson market, is if we have this pot hauler, pot growers association, whatever we're gonna do here in town, maybe move those into that farmer's market. Then maybe we can make some money there. There'll be lots of people in there then. The other thing I don't agree to is the lighthouse that we've wasted. Let's see, we spent $3,500 to buy it, $3,100 to refurbish it now, for a grand total of $6,600. I don't see how that is going to invite anybody to our beaches in Oscoda or make a difference as far as people coming through the town, getting them to the beaches. Now, I go downstate quite a bit, visit my family. my kids, my grandkid. Coming back up on numerous occasions here recently, I've noticed a sign on the side of I-75. Everybody else, Tawas and everybody else has nice signs. It says, come to our town, pictures on them, this and that. Oscoda has one, it's just a green board. It says Oscoda, next right. That's all there is to it. How about if we say Oscoda, come see our beautiful beach, perhaps with a picture of the beach in the background. I just think that'd be a lot more inviting to people. Hey, let's try out Oscoda versus wasting $6,600 on a lighthouse. I don't understand what that's gonna do to bring anybody into this town or see the beach or what have you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other cards?
No, sir.
Mr. Supervisor,
Yes.
can a couple of comments regarding what was just said?
Okay.
Not to be argumentative or anything, but Steve, I think you're mixing some things up. This township did not buy the lighthouse.
DDA did.
Yeah, they're not,
Taxpayers,
yeah. And we didn't buy the farmer's market thing. Now, I know you don't, you've told us twice, 2 different occasions, that you don't like them, that's okay, but this board did not buy those. And I guess my third thing is there is a beautiful, I'm amazed every time I go by it, billboard just this side of Au Gres with the beach.
Right.
It's fantastic. I mean, my God, you know.
Get it out on I-75.
Well, we could, you know.
That would be the CVP.
Yeah, the billboard's not ours, right?
No, but I mean, I didn't claim it was ours,
Right.
but I'm saying it's there, and Steve is referring to, I know the one you're talking
I know
about.
that one's there.
A little teeny one simply says Oscoda, next exit, or something like that, pretty plain. But I just wanna point out that there is a nice billboard with the exact scenery that you were recommending there, so, that's all.
All right, next to the consent agenda. Any questions or comments regarding the work session minutes for May 5th, the board meeting minutes for May 8th, and the correction on meeting minutes?
I will say that the potential corrected meeting minutes are not included, so not something we need to worry about approving with this consent agenda,
Okay.
just to clear that up.
All right, next on to finance for payment of bills for $114,774. Any comments? Next is the superintendent's report for environmental consultation work session reminder. Any comments? Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next on to subcommittee reports. Is there any update regarding roads?
No.
Okay. I have an update regarding contamination. We had a meeting with Senator Stamas last week in Lansing, along with the DEQ and the Health Department. We expressed our concerns. DEQ gave an update. They're gonna add another 31 monitoring wells this year. And I'm waiting on a follow-up phone call from his office. See if any further results have come along. Do you have anything to add to that?
I don't, except that expect there to be continued
Also provide an update regarding the bike path that Asabo passed their commitment for the $50,000 for Phase 1. And we are currently in negotiations with the county regarding an agreement with them for any contribution that may be coming from Oscoda. Any other subcommittees information we should know about? All right, on to the regular reports. First is newsletter presentation and approval.
Yes, included in the packet was the proposed summer 2017 newsletter that, if approved, would be distributed with tax bills in keeping with our standard practice. The newsletter was discussed to some extent at our pre-meeting work session, and it was indicated that potentially there could be some material coming regarding the PFAS and contamination issue from state agencies. So with that potential change, the newsletter is being presented for the board's approval and consideration. The discussion at that session was that in order to meet the timeline, which our treasurer typically likes in getting the document printed and mailed, we would need to hire someone or somebody to review those changes and move forward with a newsletter before our next meeting.
The health department should have a paragraph or two of information by Thursday to me to add to the newsletter if everyone's on board with that. Okay. Any other discussion about the newsletter?
So then are we gonna eliminate something else then to get that in? We'll have to, because it's only 2 pages.
Yeah, we'll see what they have to provide.
I have a couple comments. On the first page, you have half of the first page about private drinking water well contamination updates. It's half the page, or 25% of the total newsletter. And down toward the bottom on the right-hand side, you're talking about recommendations that Loud Drive and some other areas also need to have municipal water. I think the article is a bit of a tease in that you talk about in the second to the last paragraph, similar to the initial area of concern, the initial one that we're already working on, extended water lines. Township has obtained a conceptual cost estimate to quantify the cost to extend municipal water to those residents currently not serviced, described above, in the expanded area of alternative water as defined by the State Health Department and DEQ. It is estimated that approximately 227 additional homes in this expanded area do not currently have access to municipal water. This new conceptual cost estimate is being presented to the legislators and agencies to find funding and so forth. Thus the tease. What is this conceptual cost? Why not put it in there? I mean, it is, we're saying it's a conceptual cost, so it's not a final product, but it's obviously far enough along that it's being presented, as it says, to legislators and other agencies that are key to the deciding thing. Why hold that back? You know, let people know what it's going to cost to go into these. Is there any negative that I'm missing? You know, why not put it there? Second page.
Before you move on to
Go
that,
ahead.
let me,
Yeah.
we don't have a finalized cost yet. We're just given a preliminary cost just for the mains.
Okay.
But we need to get additional costs associated with service lines and such. So we're hoping to getting some money to put into the engineering costs so that we can actually have a firm number to present to legislators.
I understand, Aaron, but even those beginning costs of, we're talking about, you know, just the mains and so forth, even that would give them something that's got some teeth into it. Just for the mains, before you start running the lines, it's gonna cost us $400,000. I just picked a number out of the air, or something like that. I just think it's, like I said in my opening remarks, it's a bit of a tease. You're telling me, but whoa, we got this big project ahead of us, and we do. I don't deny that. But why not finish the story with at least a rough estimate of what it's gonna cost.
I thought they did, where it says multi-million-dollar extension project,
Let me see,
the very last line.
very last line.
Right.
Yep, it does, yep. Is that as precise as we can get?
We could get more precise, but the thought was we don't want to throw out a number that we might get held to later on. Because the number, we believe the numbers we have now are not going to be accurate.
Yeah, okay.
And the investigation is continuing in terms of the area itself, so that could change as well.
Well, this one voice says just something a little more precise than multi-million dollar, you know, but that helps. Second page, talking about the Oscoda Beach Park has expanded. With this addition to the beach park, the township has just secured 1,400 feet of pristine white sandy beach for the community and visitors to enjoy beautiful Lake Huron. Are you saying we just, some readers could read that and say we just bought 1,400 feet of beach?
That's to your point, yes, that's obviously not the case.
No, because it does say we have just secured 1,400. That's the total that we now have with the new addition. Some way to clarify that. So,
In the beginning, it says 2.04 acres.
yep, but that doesn't give you frontage on the lake too much. I know it does say 2.4 acres, but in the Old Orchard Park, I have two more. Old Orchard Park deal, talking about new updates and so forth. Should we not put down, would all the yurts that we have agreed to purchase, are they going to be usable this summer?
Yeah.
Some mention of how many total that we now have. And I guess the last thing is lower left, Starry Nights at the Pier. Is there some way that, are people supposed to call each week to find out what the movie is that is playing that week?
I believe the DDA is gonna have a schedule out, and they will, have it all over town,
Okay.
and in different businesses and stuff like that for visitors, and posted down at the beach and different areas of the township, and
Okay.
on the website, I believe, I'm not sure.
Website?
It might already be there,
Phone number to the
actually.
clerk's office, we can dump on the clerk?
Yeah. Right, I'm not sure that they've secured, I know they have a schedule, and they, have a lineup of movies and stuff, majority already.
Okay. Last thing, garage sale permits are now available at the township clerk's office. What is the cost for a garage sale permit?
There is no cost.
No cost. Okay. Should
Put a
that be
phone
put
number.
on there?
Well, it should probably have at least a phone number, I would say.
Yeah. In other words, we just want to have a record of who's having a sale or how many sales that individual.
Right, there's, yeah, because you can't have like perpetual garage sale all
Right.
summer long is what they're
Yeah.
trying to, yeah.
Get a handle on that.
Right.
Okay. That's all. Sorry.
Any other comments?
To piggyback off of Mr. Byers, I agree with where he's coming from on his first point about the preciseness of the numbers. I think involving all the stakeholders in this as much as possible is a good thing, so,
You mean the cost of
yes,
the future water project?
yes.
I don't expect a precise number, but just something better than multi-million.
I agree.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion regarding authorization for individuals to approve the newsletter prior to publication? How many do we want?
That would be at the board's discretion. It could be staff, it could be a board member or board members, or a combination there.
All right, any motions reflecting that?
I'll make a motion that we have staff take under advice the suggestions and do what they can to tweak it a little bit and get the newsletter under production.
Support.
Motion by Ms. McGuire, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the newsletter subject to changes provided by the staff prior to publication?
So moved. Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. When do you need all of the information completed by?
Today is the 22nd. I'd like to have it to the printers by the first week of June. Please.
All right, next on the agenda, backhoe purchase process and recommendation.
Yes, our capital improvement plan for the current year anticipates the purchase of a new backhoe that would be shared between the public improvement, water, and sewer funds. Each of those three funds would contribute $50,000 for a total appropriation of $150,000. We have been discussing in recent weeks the most appropriate venue to make a purchase. The general requirements for a backhoe have been established, and in short, it's being suggested by our building and grounds department that we replace the piece of equipment that's going to be taken out of service with a piece of equipment of like size and capability. I should note also that we have a representative of the building and grounds department here this evening in the form of Hamlin if there are specific questions regarding that thought and some of the other things we're going to be talking about. After considering options, it was suggested after analysis that the most efficient means of making the purchase would be through the MyDeal program. The state of Michigan offers an extended purchasing program where they go out, solicit bids for equipment and all kinds of things, frankly, from vendors. And then they make the benefits of the competitive selection process available to participating member municipalities, of which we are one. I have attached to my report a copy of a document that one of the vendors provided showing some of the municipalities that have purchased from MyDeal recently in our region. We had put together an analysis of the two backhoes that MyDeal has available that meet our size and capability requirements. That would be John Deere and Case. Caterpillar has equipment that they quoted, but the comparable piece of equipment that would meet our four-wheel drive standard, as I understand it, is larger, so it is not really competitive on a cost comparison basis. So we did not quote that. When we talked to a MyDeal representative, program representative, they suggested we should go out and get quotes directly from the vendors. We have done that. There's a quote attached from, and basically the purpose of that is to confirm the MyDeal pricing on the website is an accurate reflection of the numbers we'll get from the vendor. We got a proposal from AIS Construction for a John Deere 310 SL at a cost of $100,530. We have made a request of Case to put together a proposal based on MyDeal pricing, and when I wrote my report, there was some question whether we were going to do that. So as an alternative, we went through the website and attempted to price the Case equipment based on a line item by line item analysis, which is included in my report. The result of that was a quote of exceeding $113,000 on the board table. However, we have a quote this evening from Case on a MyDeal basis of just under $105,000. So they came down. My understanding is that may not include some of the equipment that is in the other quotation, but in any event, it would not meet a lower quotation cost price. In considering the purchase, board members should be aware that our Building and Grounds Department is recommending John Deere equipment. There's a memo in the board packet outlining the reasons the John Deere equipment is favored. There are a lot of specific details. We've had good experience with the equipment over the years in terms of durability, operability, ease of use, all those things. So there was a specific preference for that equipment. So in addition to it being the current lowest cost offering, it does have historical and operational benefits, at least from a perceived basis. So, having said all that, consideration is being sought to purchase the John Deere backhoe from AIS Construction Equipment at a cost of $100,530. Having noted in reviewing the documentation, there is a substantial discount. The discount wasn't reflected in the budget amount of $150,000.
Any comments?
What brand backhoe do we now have?
John Deere.
It is a John Deere, okay. Does it have any value for resale?
It does. We had talked about a trade-in. They actually offered to give us, they did give us a number, but we are thinking, and we can address this potentially in a subsequent meeting, we're thinking we would be better to try and sell it outright. Better return for the township.
All right.
And so you noted in here that we had budgeted that between two accounts, so that's the 100,530 is right on line with what we budgeted. Is that?
We actually had 3 different funds. We budgeted $50,000 for a total of
150. So we'll be under budget, plus if we're able to sell the old equipment.
We're gonna keep that approximately 50,000 in the DPW to improve other equipment?
Well, my thought would be that we would spread the resulting cost equally. All 3 funds that were originally budgeted, but we certainly could target the same. Discretion, if we believe that there is particular benefit in savings going to the property group. In concept, basically, you use the water and sewer funds to buy the equipment. There's an argument that that isn't entirely fair because it was used by people philosophical.
Did we also have a budget overrun with the acquisition of equipment for the fire department recently?
Not that I recall, significant margin, that would be a separate fund, budgetary fund.
Any other comments? You have a motion?
I'll make the motion, we had purchased the John Deere backhoe 310 SL from AIS Construction Equipment for $100,530.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Gieske?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Next, River Road Bridge closure.
Yes, we've recently gotten notice from the road commission that the bridge is going to be closed from June 19th through July 17th. It will be open to traffic on July 17th, but there will be some remaining work for about an additional 10 days. So complete closure will be the 19th through July 17th, June 19th, I should be clear on that. Traffic will be detoured through Oscoda Township on the route set forth in the report here. Although traffic which complies with the weight restrictions of the Mill Street Bridge can use that path, which because this is a well-traveled route, it's going to be closed during a very busy time in our community. But to mention that, we have it on our message sign, people aware that it's not possible. So, notice aside, there will be some inconvenience.
All right, next sanitary sewer billing issue.
Wanted to make the board aware in public, again, it's been similar to the above topic. We recently determined that there was a software issue in our sanitary sewer billing dating back to early this year where an improved rate adjustment was implemented. It's a minor increase. Software picked up inactively a portion of it and added that. So essentially, the bills have been overcharged since the beginning of the year to about 1,400 sanitary sewer customers. The rough impact per customer in total for that period monthly is $20 to $30. Varies quite a bit depending on their consumption every month. So our utility billing clerk has been working with the vendor to diagnose the problem. Now that that's occurred, we are looking at avenues to make corrections to individual accounts. And it's been working with BSNA on that particular mechanism. Once we have a plan of attack there, we will be sending a letter out to residents so they know in advance what happened and what to expect in terms of credit being mailed to their account against which future utility charges will be out. So I wanted to make you aware of it. It's urged. Clearing what happened.
Bob, that was for sewer-only customers, is that correct?
Yeah, sewer customer.
Right, not sewer and water, or a portion of just sewer-only people, okay.
That is possible. I'm not sure of the sewer-only customers. But
Oh, okay.
affected only sanitary sewer.
Rates, okay.
All right, next, Iosco County agreement for the bike path.
Yes, the supervisor had made reference to this earlier, because there are some potential legal issues associated with the township contributing to phase one of the exploration trail. And the county has requested that the township contribute $50,000, which was discussed in conjunction with the original trail route. And for clarity's sake, by that I mean the original route crossing the River Road Bridge, entering into Oscoda Township. Those two factors combined to prompt a meeting recently taking place between township and county representatives. One of the potential solutions that was discussed in the concept was development of an agreement where Oscoda Township would contribute $50,000 to phase one. That would essentially be, as things stand now, from the Mill Street Bridge to the Oscoda Area Schools Complex would be phase one. And then at some point in the future, in a predetermined time frame, the county would contribute at least $50,000 to phase three, which would go from the school complex over to the park. If the county did not make that $50,000 contribution to phase three within that prescribed time frame, they would refund the $50,000 cost. I emphasize this is a concept at this point. I have a draft agreement that will be finalized here, hopefully in the near future, and then sent out. I wanted to make the board aware of it because obviously it will take two parties to be amenable to the agreement for the process to be successful and the project to move forward. We will keep you advised as discussion unfolds, but hopefully we'll be able to have an agreement in the future depending on the action.
Any comments? All right, next a resolution of ordinances for ordinance 2017-17, code enforcement officer title change.
During previous work session, concept of changing the code enforcement officer's title was discussed and appeared to be support for the idea, and as set forth in the resolution, the underlying premise is that it would promote compliance in terms of the title and the perception of the position to a higher degree than we now experience, and also maybe minimize the negativity associated with the enforcement of the code. There are apparently other communities that made the change and had some benefit result, so if adopted, the resolution would change the title immediately to code compliance officer.
Any comments?
I am okay with changing it. I'm not sure how big an impact, no matter what we call it, it will have on residents. I think it's the actions that we need to take in order to get what we need done as the source of contention with people. So I'm not saying anything necessarily against it. I just wanted to publicly say I'm not sure it's going to solve any of our negative perception problems.
Any other comments?
Similar to John's comment, I'll just add the same thing. I don't have anything against changing the name. I also don't think it's really going to do anything. But I know that the board has talked in the past about moving code enforcement into the police department, and I think that we would get better results and maybe better rapport with the residents if it was within the police department's activities.
Anything else? Do you have a motion?
Move to adopt resolution 2017-17, code enforcement officer title change to code compliance officer.
I'll support that. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
I'm going to say yes, but I hope that none of this is interpreted as a slap in the hand for our code enforcement officer. I think he's doing a good job. But if you want to change it to code compliance and you don't expect miracles of change, fine, yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, draft medical marijuana ordinance review and input. Before we start on that, I want to clarify here that all we're doing here is rating the ordinance on the merits of itself, not regarding any opinions about marijuana itself. It's just the ordinance, how it's written. Is it technically at the point that if it were to pass, that it's acceptable, or are there changes that people want to make to it?
So are you asking if we are ready to consent as board members, if we would vote for it, or are you just asking for technical language? Is it correct?
Input,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
Just a point of clarification. This is an ordinance, this is a draft that our subcommittee created. This, if everything in here is approved, then we would send it to our attorney to actually draft the physical ordinance, and that would come back to this board for approval. So this that you have in hand, we would not be ready to vote on anyway, because it isn't the final ordinance. So
Sure.
just to clear that part up.
Absolutely.
So I wasn't at the last meeting. I know there was a lot of discussion about this topic, and I guess and I know that there was opinions, and I gotta say, I feel like Mr. Miles does, and I'm kind of concerned about it being in the downtown. I haven't had a chance, to be honest, I've been out of town, to look at the draft. Is that addressed in the draft? Is that addressed someplace else? I mean, where does that fall into play for everything?
Well, I think in the original draft, we had just noted in terms of dispensaries, 5. But then after discussion, we took it back to the committee and we decided to limit it to 1 in the B1 district, 2 in the B2, and 2 in the WB3. Split it up. I presented that to the DDA, and sorry, Ann isn't here, she could probably have more input on that, but my feeling was that they were more receptive to that idea of just limiting it to 1 in B1. Now, if the board, this is only what we're offering. If the board decides that you don't want any in the B1, we can make that change. There's pros and cons on both sides of having it in the downtown area. So, like I say, I did present it to the DDA. They seem to be receptive of that idea. They were concerned originally about the possibility of having 5 dispensaries in the downtown area, which could have happened based on the wording that we had in the original draft. So,
And just because you say that there can be 5, that doesn't mean that's what we would have.
no. It's all about who would apply for the license. We may not have any facilities here. If no one applies for a license, then.
Can you limit it to less than 5?
Sure.
Why would you ever want 5 in a town this size? Why would that even be possible?
Well, one aspect of doing that is that if you have, let's say, only 2 companies apply for a license, and even though you allow for 5, only 2 decide to apply. Those 2 then have an option as to what location they find feasible.
And one idea that was brought out at the DDA that I had, quite frankly, hadn't considered is that some people may feel uncomfortable going into a facility that is in the downtown area where people are walking around. So under that guideline, 1 in the WB3 might be more appropriate for people to go to fill their prescriptions where it's a little more out of the way. But, you know, it's a business. It's up to the people that are applying for the licenses to make business decisions and where they feel the best location for these. Like any other business, they're going to try and figure out the best location to operate their business, and that's why we changed it to 1 in the B1 and made you'll see the change. I think it's in the packet for the various zoning districts. So.
I did do the webinar and kind of followed along with some of the things that they were talking about. This is just the permits are only for a year, that's correct?
Yes.
So after a year, we could review like the business and how it's affecting, tourism or different things, aspects in our town, and say, hey, you know what, this just isn't working for us. We don't want to renew your application. Can we also then, if that's the case, couldn't we start at 1 facility or say we're going to do 1 and then change it later if we find out that that's a benefit to our town?
That's what we're looking for input.
Okay, well, that's what I would recommend, I guess.
Yes, we can change the ordinance later, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
whatever gets decided for this one, if it passes, then a year or 2 years down the road, we can make adjustments to it.
I'd like it to just be in the WB3, to be honest, and not downtown. My personal opinion. If you're gonna try it. I mean, there's other things that we've done that, and I'm glad that it's only a year permit, that, there's some things that we've, okayed and they're not working out so well, and there's no provision to do anything about it at this point, so, our hands are kinda tied. I don't wanna see that happen.
I would rather see them not in the B1, or probably the B2, WB3, or something else. But even with the breakdown and the disbursement, I'd rather not see them downtown.
You're saying not in B1 and not in B2?
Preferably, yes. As to the number,
And you're also saying that too?
Also, yes.
Okay.
Say WB.
As to the number of facilities allowed, I don't know, because I feel like once you allow some, allowing one is tough on competition or anything. But I do see the value in a wait and see approach, maybe with provisioning centers as a whole. That's my take. But if we did allow them, I would say not downtown.
Any other input?
Yeah, just a comment that is probably kind of useless, but I really hate to see whatever, I don't know my final feeling on this yet. I'm still kicking it around. But I really am unhappy to see anybody that's against it, and I'm not just talking about tonight, I'm talking about, you know, all the literature and letters and comments, verbal, that we're just doing this so we can raise money for the township. I am really sorry to hear that. I mean, you know, in my thinking of it, and I'm not the greatest guy by far, but I don't even think of, I have no clue how much money this would bring this township, and it doesn't mean a damn thing to me. I just, I'm thinking about, you know, the pros and cons, because I really do think there are good and bad to weigh. Not, it isn't all bad, but I sure hate to see people just say, we're doing this because we want to get more money.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's inflammatory and entirely uninformed to just assume that this board feels that way. I think it's wrong. It is not certainly how I feel. And it's not how it's been discussed in any of our work sessions.
Whatever the consensus of the board is fine with me on it. But just keep in mind that I think that one is too limiting. I think at least two is a good number, so that there is a competitive nature involved here. One of the aspects is that it does bring the cost down a lot, so people who do have medical needs, it makes it much more viable for them. The other is that since I've been in this township for 6 years, the consensus I received from a few years ago was that it's a focus to keep people downtown, but business in general. Move it downtown, don't put retail on Wordsmith. And one fall off that can come from just limiting it to WB3 is that you then limit that traffic to downtown because they're going to be going to Wordsmith to make purchases. So there are a few business people who have expressed to me the benefits they feel of having a facility next to them because it generates more walking traffic in front of their store. So I'm not saying they should or should not be down there. It's just something to consider.
Yep.
I think it will bring traffic. I mean, people are gonna, and we talk about tourism, but there are tourists that come up here that do have the medical marijuana cards, and they will be looking for some place to fill their prescriptions. Our function, the task we were given, the subcommittee of the Planning Commission, was to draft this ordinance. We have amongst the four of us, we really not discussed what our personal preferences are in terms of this one way or the other. I don't think that's important. Our job was to put together an outline for an ordinance that we could get consensus on, and our mode of operation was that we were going to bring it and have as many people look at it as possible to get input. And that's why we're here tonight. We were at the last board meeting, we presented it. We presented it to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission was fine with what we had at the time. We made the change to the one facility in the B1 because of the comments of this board. I would agree with Aaron. I think limiting just to the WB3 would be limiting because there are some districts in the B2 which would be fine locations on F41, for example.
Okay, that's,
So, I mean, I don't think you want to be over limiting on this. I understand, there's concern about having it in the B1. Like I mentioned, when I presented to the downtown, they were concerned about having multiple dispensaries in the B1 district. But when I talked about changing it to one, they seemed to be, I think, Martin, you were there.
I was in that meeting.
They seemed to be
There
more
was a
receptive.
handful of people, yeah, they were more, at ease of
With just
restricting
one.
it, yeah.
Yeah, just one. And there was some comments, there have been comments brought up in the past about various things that happen, specifically in Washington, Colorado, Oregon, where they've now made it recreational marijuana legal. And there's a lot of people that are in favor of it will find statistics that show that good comes out of it. People that are against it will come up with statistics that say, the crime rate that goes up and all these kinds of things. So I did some research. This is a study that was done by the Cato Institute. And what's interesting about this is that their findings, and the Cato Institute, I don't know if they're in Washington, D.C., it's kind of a think tank. It's a non-political organization. They did a study on the effects of the states, Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. And I just want to show one of the graphs here. And there's an irony that happens here, because people will say, for instance, this graph has to do with property crime rates per 100,000 residents. And people have shown statistics showing that those rates go up when you institute legal marijuana. Other people have brought statistics showing that it goes down. The irony is they're both right and they're both wrong. Because what happens if I don't know if you can see this graph, I'll pass it around. But this is a survey that was done by the Cato Institute from January of 2009 to February of 2016. And as you can see, there are spikes where the crime rate goes up. Now this is for property crime rate. Violent crime rate is this rate down here, which is virtually a straight line. But you can see there's spikes up and spikes down. So whichever point you were trying to make, you would select a time period in here that would have a spike one way or the other, and that would give you the results you were looking for. If you look at the mean of this curve, it started off in January of 2009 at 400. That's 400 per 100,000. In 2016, it ended up back at 400. There's virtually no change over that 7-year period in crime rates per 100,000 people. So, this one is for Denver. If you look at the Seattle, now Seattle's interesting because their curve actually goes down. But there are the same spikes, which you could take the up and down numbers. But as you see, their trend actually goes down, and this is for Seattle. So, just as Aaron said, I'm not trying to push this one way or the other. I have my own personal feelings about this, but I just want to make everybody aware of what the actual facts are when it comes to some of the things you'll hear in terms of numbers about various things. And the same thing applies, they also included traffic accidents before and after this was passed in these states, and the graphs are virtually identical. So I just wanted to pass that information along so everybody can, kind of have a more
Who was it you said that did that?
Cato Institute.
And they were hired by who?
They do this on their own.
Okay.
They
I didn't know if it was something a state wanted to have done or...
no, their objective is to take on public policy and analyze it, and then distribute the information to the public so that you can have an understanding of what public policy is, good or bad.
Bill,
Are you suggesting that these statistics for recreational marijuana have a direct bearing or parallel with medical marijuana?
That would be my assumption, yeah. Yeah, because the recreational is what people seem to fear the most. We have medical marijuana here in Oscoda Township right now. That was passed in 2008. So people were able to get a card, and they could grow up to 12 plants. They could have, or a caregiver could provide 4 or 5, have 5 patients each, and so he could have up to 72 plants provide for his patients. That's here now. I mean, that's happening. The idea of this, I believe, is to, as much as we don't like to think about it, drugs are here, and we know how prevalent they are here in Oscoda Township. I think that the legislature's theory was to try and take it out of back alleys and bring it in the light so that it could be regulated. This system is going to be, it's what they call seed to sale. It will be tracked from the moment the seeds are purchased to the time the final product is sold. And every step in between will be regulated by the state. So I just wanted to pass that information along. We're still in the process of refining this ordinance. Oscoda, their superintendent, Lisa Sutton's been sitting in on all of our subcommittee meetings. They plan to draft an ordinance very similar to ours. And she's been at every one of our subcommittee meetings and taking notes and in preparation of their ordinance. So.
What's the next step after this?
Well, the next step, I guess we need to get some confirmation of what you would like to see in terms of the, I think, I'm hoping everyone has actually read the rest of the ordinance, and hopefully Public Act 182 and
281?
or 281, yes, I'm sorry, yeah, Public Act 281. And what we're hoping to do is refine the ordinance, the draft that we have, and then if we can get a consensus, and right now I think the only question is the number of facilities in the zoning districts. And if we can get a confirmation on that, we'll send it to the lawyer to have it looked at, and there may be some things that he comes up with that we might have to take a look at. But that's what we'd like to see is some consensus from the board of the zoning districts and the number you'd like to have.
Do we have time to have this come up to the next board meeting?
Sure.
And, okay.
Yeah.
Because if, again, like we discussed at the last work session, if everybody can do their own research and formulate a good, solid idea of what kind of limitations or not limitations you want with this ordinance. Is that good?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't, there won't be any licenses issued until December 15th. Our plan and our hope was to have our ordinance in place because we have had inquiries from out of state from people looking to buy properties for this purpose. And if we're going to have it here, our committee felt that we would like to have this in place so that when people are looking to apply for their licenses, our ordinance will be ready. Because we'll have to send this to Lansing if someone applies for a permit.
Any other comments?
If we voted on this now, Bill, just since it's draft, and it went down, where would you go from there?
Well, we would need some input as to what it is that you would be against so that we could revise it. We're still in the drafting phase, so that's why we're coming tonight to get some input from everybody as to, like I said, basically the number and the zoning districts.
I guess I have a question out of ignorance. If this ordinance were about purple purple houses, and this board were to vote it down, would the zoning board still be trying to find a way to make the purple houses legal?
No, not,
Then why are we doing it in this case?
well, I don't know that we were charged by the township board to draft this ordinance. That
Right.
was our understanding, is that the board put a moratorium on it so that the planning commission could draft an ordinance for the medical marijuana.
I'm
And so
trying
that's
to
what,
figure out at some point, are we kind of going down this road because we're all in the assumption that we all agree that we want this? Is that the perspective somehow? I'm trying to understand where this is all coming from, because I'm a little confused. I don't remember exactly voting on an affirmation that I was in favor of this. I remember there was a discussion about trying to figure out what the zoning was going to be, but it's even possible I missed that meeting. I don't recall. But I'm trying to figure out what is going on. What are we trying to do right now? Are we trying to find a way to boil this down to make it somehow palatable for everybody? Or, sort of dilute it in some way and make it so that we can make this pass in some form or another? I'm sorry if
Going
I'm
about it in this,
asking this the wrong way, but that's my question.
well, if what you're saying, maybe a strategy we could think about would be having a public meeting, kind of an open house, where we could discuss this topic, put it in the paper to advertise that we're going to have a, kind of an open forum for people to discuss this, and see what the residents have to say about it. I guess maybe would be, we did have our zoning administrator put an ad in the paper stating that at the planning commission meeting, we were going to have a discussion of the medical marijuana. But nobody showed up.
we've discussed it at 2 of these meetings so far.
So far, at 2 of these meetings.
It is a very good point. I was
At one of the
thinking-
planning commission meetings, we did have a person that came to the meeting. We weren't discussing medical marijuana, but he made a public comment. He wanted to know what we were doing. He was interested in the facilities. So he was in favor of that.
You're absolutely right. We have seen very little, as a point of record, we've seen very little public comment or interest in this topic. Absolutely, unequivocally. I don't understand, frankly, why there aren't church groups voicing, why there aren't other groups coming to the table to try to talk this up. And I'm completely blown away that with the times and opportunities in the past that I've experienced being a resident of Oscoda, the moral majority or minority, however you want to look at it, have missed this opportunity entirely. I don't understand where everybody is.
Missed, what do you mean by opportunity?
We've had the ones you just mentioned. You listed.
Meetings to be here for public comment, those
Thank you.
type of things.
Exactly.
Are they
These
mi-
are the opportunities.
are they
No one's coming.
Are they missing the opportunities?
Well, apparently, they're not here. They're not here to voice it in favor or in denial or decline.
One about going about it with this method of going through all the details of the ordinance, researching the laws, I think makes us far more knowledgeable about the realities of this rather than basing it off of quick feeling. If it just came up without any prior thing and saying, hey, do we want this? Everybody votes yes or they vote no based on limited information. At least this way, we'll get a thorough understanding, a lot of time put in it to make sure it's done exactly how we do or do not want it done, and we're not knee-jerking it. If it doesn't pass, at least we have a framework to go by. If the state does come down at some future point and mandates that it is legal, there is no option.
That's an if.
Yes.
So, I think listening to the discussion, the question is going to arise, at what point does the board have enough information to establish a direction? if not now, what information is lacking? Because my recollection of how this whole thing started was there was at least a willingness to entertain an ordinance, but we need to do the investigation as the supervisors indicated. So a lot of time and effort's been invested to get the document in front of us. We're now confronted with the reality of do we want to do this as a matter of fundamental policy. And that's sort of the first branch on the decision making. Then you get into, well, what zones and how many and all those things. So maybe we need to circle back and take a look at, do we have enough information to make that fundamental decision? This step makes sense for our community.
Yes. I personally would not like to address that at this meeting, but at a future meeting, whether that's the next one or further down.
I'm fine with the next meeting so I can talk to a few
But,
people.
yeah. But if everybody could make sure they read Public Act 281 and 282
And some business people.
and over these ordinances and research other states, call police departments if you like, whatever it is. Good solid research would definitely help out.
Was there police department ever involved in this, Bill, yet?
Yeah, I've met with Chief David twice,
Twice?
and we'll just say the first time I met with him, before I could hardly get a word out of my mouth, his first response was, well, I'm against this, because it's still federally illegal. At a meeting I had with him just last week, we spent about an hour going through this. Quite frankly, he realizes it's coming. There's not much he can do about it, and he's prepared to, do whatever needs to be done in terms of enforcement, and he's putting together numbers, cost of an officer per hour for, so we can have numbers to put into our permit fees and that sort of thing to establish costs for that. Like I say, his initial reaction was he was against it. As you can imagine, most law enforcement people would be, because it is still technically illegal at a federal level because it's a Class 1 narcotic. If that ever changes, if the federal government simply changes it to a Class 2 narcotic, they'll sell it at the Rite Aid. So,
One more question. Way back when, a couple of weeks ago, you made the comment that if this ever happens, there's gonna be a percentage breakdown of the revenue this generates. And you mentioned the sheriff's department gets 5%, but you never stated, or does this affect our police department? Do we get any money out of this, or are we gonna have to carry this on as a burden?
no, we'll get money.
We'll get money for it?
Yeah.
Because it only meant sheriff, it didn't say locals.
That's a 5% of the pot that's gonna be established. 5% of that will go to sheriff departments across the state. There's also 5% of that pot that goes to state police. And 25% of that pot will be divided up amongst the townships that have ordinances that have licensees in their townships.
So our 1/50th, we gotta come up with the money for our sheriff, or our police department. You just said sheriff and state police, you didn't mention local police departments.
There's a 5% of the pot that goes for training for our local police department.
Hey, that's the first time I heard that, so I wanted to hear.
Yeah, 5% for training for local municipal police departments.
You need to use a different term, 5% of the pot.
Yes.
Jeez.
No pun intended, right? Of the fund.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not.
All right, any other comments?
I guess I do have one last one, and that's to find out why, was it only the DDA that they're concerned that then determined the limit of 5 dispensaries, whereas the other 4 categories that are listed here are all considered unlimited throughout the township. So we could have 100 growers, but we're limited to 5 dispensaries. Is that kind of a realistic balance?
Well, that's probably an unrealistic number for growers. But the growers can only be in industrial or agricultural. The state mandates those zoning districts.
processors as well,
Yes.
and secured transporter, I suppose, is a place where the vehicles are stored.
Yes.
Kind of like an ambulance has to have a home base,
It would be more like a trucking terminal.
trucking terminal. Safety compliance facility.
That would be along the lines of a lab. We have a perfect facility to that on the base.
Can you hold on till public comment?
It directly affects what you're speaking about.
Any other comments? Okay. We'll go on to the next here, board review member resignation.
It's in the packet.
He's a member of the planning commission that wrote this. You want to make him wait till the end?
Are you okay with him speaking now?
I certainly am.
I'd happily vote on it.
I'd like to hear what he has to say.
That's fine with me.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
only want to bring up one point. In no zoning is this going to be allowed as a principal use. It has to go for a special land use permit. So in other words, in order for a facility to open, then it's going to have to go before the planning commission first under a special land use. That may make a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, board of review member resignation.
Yes, in the packet is a document from Board Review Member Peter Maxwell indicating that he is needing to resign because he's no longer eligible to serve as the board is that his resignation will be accepted with acknowledgement of service that he's been.
Well, I appreciate his service. It's definitely not the easiest board to be on, but it's necessary. We have that board, and they're doing a fantastic job on it, so. I make a motion that we accept his resignation with regrets.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Definitely yes, with regrets. I'm the guy that appointed him, and at the time, there's quite an age difference between Pete Maxwell and the other members of the board, and there was some doubt, even with me, about how that was going to work, and he blended in with the others beautifully, from what I've heard, and so I thank him for his service and his adaptability, and theirs, the other two also. They got along pretty good. There might have been 25 or 30 years difference between he and the others, so.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes. Motion's passed. Next, the Road Commission Road Improvement Agreement for Alexander Road.
Yes, this is the formal acknowledgement between Township and the Road Commission of the Seal Coat Park project that would be on the western segment from F-41 to the end of the state land. Doing that assessment to the ownership. It is part one of hopefully will be a two-part project with a special assessment for the township's contribution would include $1,461.
Any comments?
I just have one. The second part was Shorewood. I've had a couple residents ask about the update on that. Do we have an update on that?
It is, pending my understanding, this petition has been provided to the road commission. It's under,
Okay.
it sounded quite promising based on the
Good, they'll be happy.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gieske, support by Ms. McGuire. Roll call.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes,
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, the PFAS Health Issues Conference that I would like to attend. With this conference, I'm hoping to get out of it a lot of information regarding what other communities, how they're handling this issue, updated medical information, how people are acting about it, new studies that have come out. There's I think a revised ATSDR study that's being done right now. And now I'm drawing a blank here on the third one. Whatever I said on Friday, the work session. But I think this will be a big benefit to us. There is a member of the DEQ who's also attending. But I think it's going to get us a lot more knowledge as to what's really happening with this. It's a 2-day conference. Apparently, it's very expensive to live in Boston. So,
Speaking to that, I spent the better part of last
I was
summer
gonna
in
say,
Boston.
John would
and
know
it
that
is expensive.
firsthand.
It is very expensive. I just want to be sure with the expense, since $3,000 is a lot of money, that we are getting value back. I do think the conference is good to go to. I know it's hopefully something we want to be reimbursed by someday by the Air Force, but until that time comes, it is, our township's money that we may not ever get paid back for, so.
right. No, I
Just
think we
wanna-
do going to get a lot of value out of it, especially in using that more detailed information with our legislators to convey to them the seriousness of this.
Sure. Credibility. Yeah, so I guess the only thing in making that point is $3,000 seems like a lot. I don't know. Like I said, with my track record of flying back and forth, I don't know if there's any way to limit it a bit.
Quantify?
But that's my
Yeah.
only
Right.
concern, just watching it.
Saw pricing for several different hotels, flight tickets, and military discounts, government rates, reward points from several things, and that's the lowest I could find that was within a reasonable distance of the conference.
Okay.
I would like to.
I wish it was low enough that we could actually send more people.
It would be
I
interesting.
appreciate that. I'd like to say that possibly this topic and the one coming up next on the agenda should have been flipped, and it didn't occur to me during our work session, because the value of you attending would be magnified if you were also one of the RAB or the second, or the stand alternate RAB representative for the board. So it'd just be nice to have that. Otherwise, if you weren't involved in the RAB at all, I don't know, it would just be less valuable. I think it'd be nice if it was one of those two. It hadn't occurred to me at the time of the workshop, our work session last Friday, like I said. Otherwise, I might have suggested a flip of sequence.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
Yes, there is a motion. I move that we go ahead with this project. I think it's money well spent.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, Restoration Advisory Board representative for both a primary and alternate.
As we've talked in the past about various roles the board members would play relative to the RAB board, but I don't believe that we have identified a specific representative or representatives for recommendation of the selection of essentially, who do we want representing us for the township on the board? And the ability of that person to presumption at this point is that it would be a recommendation.
Any comments?
Yeah, so last fall, in October, I had mentioned that I was very interested in bringing this topic forward. And I started then attending the RAC meetings, the Air Force. I've since attended as many as we were allowed to attend, Township viewpoint, until we were asked not to no longer attend. But I continue to remain involved, and I've been to the town hall meetings, and I went to the on the road trip to Lansing early this last week, to meet with Senator Stamps. So I'd like to ask to be on this committee, or to be the primary or the alternate, to be decided by the board. But I'd like to be involved very much.
Any other comments? Is there anybody else who would like to be a primary or alternate?
Well, I can't be since I was on the selection committee, so.
I'd be willing to be the alternate, if need be.
Okay.
But also, I think Tim's point to you going to this conference adds a factor. I don't know about your ability, time-wise and everything, but if you're going to have that added knowledge, bringing it to bear at the RAB may be of value. So, just a thought.
I would agree with that. If you would consider being our representative, that would be, you could bring a lot of information to that board.
You looking at me?
Yes.
Okay. I can't quite tell. I'm willing to be an alternate, but whatever the board decides with that, so. I'd rather not be a primary, since I'm taking care of a lot of other aspects with this. So,
Well, then I would like to ask the board for your support in my being the primary representative then.
all right. So, do we have a motion regarding primary and alternate positions?
I move that we accept Mr. Cummings as the primary delegate to the board.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Appropriate, yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Do we have a motion regarding an alternate?
I think we ought to have two alternates. What's wrong with that?
I don't think there is anything wrong with that.
How about Mr. Nordine and Mr. Weed as alternates?
Support.
Maybe one of them has a schedule conflict on a particular day, the other one can,
Sounds good.
so.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Ms. McGuire,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Next, real estate sales.
Yeah, we had in our goals and objectives to look at our real estate holdings, which are quite extensive, and come up with a committee to assess those properties and then do an RFP to solicit input from local realtors. And we have our goals and objectives in place now, so I would like to move ahead with this. This is a pretty simple thing to do, I think. Doesn't cost us anything. There's no cost involved to list with a realtor. And it's getting our busy time of year. People are going to be coming up here. I'd like to get this moving forward as soon as possible. And I'd be happy to serve on that committee if just in terms of full disclosure, I did in past hold a real estate license. I haven't had that license for 20 years. I don't know if anybody else has a real estate license that probably would preclude them from being on a selection committee for a realtor, but Otherwise,
I did. Mine expired last year.
mine expired 20 years ago.
I might suggest one way to approach this might be by way of an update. We've got, from staff standpoint, a draft RFP, it's not final yet. To expedite the process, if we had a board member or a couple of board members who wanted to volunteer to work with staff as opposed to creating a formal committee. To avoid hosting meetings and all this stuff. Unless the board thinks that's necessary.
I don't think that's necessary.
I'd be happy to work with staff to make that happen.
I'd be interested in it as well. I've done some research lately regarding the insurance we hold on a lot of the properties. I've become familiar with some of them, so something I'm interested in at least.
Sounds good.
It's not rocket surgery here. It's simple stuff.
Did you actually say rocket surgery?
Yes, I did.
Great. Nothing like mixing a metaphor. Well, then I'd like to make a motion to have Mr. Palmer and Mr. Modine help staff in the function of evaluating our real estate.
Now, is that brain science that you're talking about here?
Sure. Not sure.
Sure seems easy as pie.
3.14.
I'll support that. Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Gieske.
Yes.
Ms. McGuire.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Now we're on to public comment. Anyone may speak without filing a card. There is still a 4-minute time limit. If you're going to speak, please come up to the podium and introduce yourself. Does anybody wish to speak? Yes.
My name is Ani LaRich. I'm representing the Sable Valley Audubon chapter, immediate past board member, and I'm currently team leader for the Kirtland Warbler Kirtlands. Gotta be precise here, or Peggy will yell at me. Kirtland's Warbler Tours, and they're being paid for by the local chapter. There are 2 other tours, long-standing tours. This is our second year. The long-standing one is out of Mayo by the Forest Service, and the most westerly one in Grayling is works out of the state forest, and it's operated and paid for by the Michigan Audubon. What I'd like to do is just play this about the bird, if it'll work. No, it's not going to work. The reason I wanted to play it, it's the loudest wood warbler, and it's the largest warbler. But you're never going to see this bird in your backyard or your feeders. It just doesn't go there. It goes directly from the Bahamas in the spring to its nesting place, which is basically the National Forest and State Forest between Oscoda Township and Grayling. 90% of the world's population is in that area. And about 5% is in the UP, and a couple percent each in Wisconsin and across Lake Huron. This is as much our Michigan local bird as anyone could be. It's a unique bird. It does not nest in the trees, it nests on the ground, and predators can get to it. It It only nests under trees that are 5 to 15 feet tall, so it is kind of weird there. And it needs a protection. It's been endangered for over 30 years. So we're operating these tours, and basically it's the next, we've had yesterday and today tours. We had 20 people out in all those 2 days. And the 5 Saturdays in June, we operate 1 per morning. Maximum of 20. We ask that you pass the flyers around to your friends, talk it up, word of mouth. We get people from all over. This morning we had people from California, Traverse City, downstate, Detroit. So they come for this bird. So there is a benefit, jobs. There's a benefit because the Forest Service hires loggers to cut the trees. Every 50 years, the trees have to be cleared, replanted, and that pays for itself. So there's no tax dollars anymore. They've really worked it out. We're asking for the township. The township has supported us by letting us use the electronic sign, and we will be asking to put the flyers out at Old Orchard Park. We have put them out at KOA, and they really like to have them. We've gone to the realtors, CVB, restaurants, and we hope that the community will take this bird on as a public project, because it is endangered and it is a very local asset.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Does anybody else wish to speak? All right.
I
then-
just have another topic totally. No? Can't do that?
I hate to tell you no, but
You hate?
I'd hate to do that, but I have to. All right, board comment.
Question to Bob. Going back to the River Road Bridge reconstruction, did that date change at any point? I'm asking that question because I thought it was at one time guaranteed that it was going to be done by the 4th of July, just before the 4th, and now it's the 17th of July. Is it always been the 17th?
I don't recall.
Okay.
It could have been some time ago. But it's been in the current slot with the underlying intended to accommodate the school.
Yeah, I understand that starting point rationale, but, and the reason I'm asking this, I've asked this at a work session before, is, you know, those 2 businesses by the bridge only have 3 holidays during the summer: Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. I think Labor Day is the least of the 3. They're getting killed on the 2, you know. And in thinking that, I thought I heard Bruce Boland or somebody from the road commission say, we're gonna hurry up and get this done on the 1st of July or something. I don't really know how they could do it if they don't start till the
I
19th of
think the way
June.
Bruce put it in
Pardon?
our meeting, Jim, I think the way Bruce put it, he's gonna get it done the week before the canoe race.
Oh, the canoe race.
Mhm.
So I'm
I think that's
confusing
what the
canoe
comment
race
was.
and 4th of July. All right, thanks, Marty.
Any other comment?
I have one comment. It was mentioned at our last board meeting about our Friday work sessions to go over the agenda. And I'm in favor of that. I think they're helpful. But I was reading an article in the last MTA magazine. They did an extensive 6-page article covering how to make your board meetings better. And one of the things they talked about is trying to cut down the time and to encourage residents to attend. And in doing that, you have to be accountable for their time. So you don't want to waste people's time if you're going to try and encourage them to come to the meetings. And I just wanted to read a brief statement that's in here concerning this topic. It says, as a township board member, you're faced with complex issues and critical decisions, many of which involve taxpayer dollars. If you don't read through the information and ask questions in advance, you'll either make an uninformed decision or waste time at meetings on issues that could have been handled on your own time. The purpose of a board meeting is to use information, not collect it. Everyone should come into the meeting knowledgeable and ready to make decisions. I thought that made a lot of sense in terms of having our Friday meeting. I don't think it's trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes in public. They're open meetings. But I read this just the other day, and it seemed to fall right in line with what we were talking about, so I want to share that. Thank you.
Thanks. And to piggyback on that, one of the reasons for having that meeting was that prior, there was a executive staff meeting held the Mondays prior to board meetings. And that was supervisor, clerk, and treasurer, which was just fine, no issue with that. It's good that people are getting together to do whatever they're gonna do for that. But I wanted to improve on top of that and make it to where it was a fully open meeting for all board members to attend, and the public could come and see it also. So, and a little bit further in advance, so there was actually time to work any issues that may come up for that next meeting. I have another item regarding a meeting with Sue Aller, which will occur on, I believe it's June 2nd. So, and I think in these meetings, it'd be nice to have, if another board member can come with to these. It'd be good if we've got a good breadth of board members who attend these. So, Mr. Cummings came with to the meeting in Lansing. So I would like to have somebody also come with to Sue Aller's meeting in Lincoln.
What's June 2nd, Aaron?
That would be good for John to go since he's gonna be an alternate person.
Friday.
Is it Friday?
That's
9
true,
o'clock?
with Mr. Nordine being an alternate. Yeah, June 2nd, it'll be late afternoon.
I'd be willing to go, absolutely.
Would 3 be too many?
I think so in this case because of the tight setting that it's in.
Okay, all right.
Let
Small area.
me verify with her on that.
Okay, sure.
Any other board comment?
The community center had its family wellness day in between this board meeting and last, I believe. So I just wanted to mention that that did take place and that it was, I thought, successful. Thought a lot of people, a lot of families came, and I think that's a good target audience and seemed to have a lot of fun. And I think I saw some people who honestly didn't know what the community center had to offer, so that was interesting. I think they accomplished what they wanted to, from where I stand. So
The committee and everybody that, put some time into that, I was there also, and they put a lot of work into it and did a great job. Slaggarts are amazing people, I can tell you that, for sure. I appreciate everything that they did. It was awesome. The preschool room was amazing.
Anything else? Then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.